Stop counting the days lost in the rhythm.
The Biden administration is finalizing plans to send the Patriot missile defense system to Ukraine that could be announced as soon as this week, according to 2 U.S. officials and a senior administration official. The Pentagon's plan still needs to be approved by Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin before it is sent to President Joe Biden for his signature. The 3 officials told CNN that approval is expected. It would be the most effective long-range defensive weapons system sent to the country, and officials say it will help secure airspace for NATO nations in Eastern Europe. It is not clear how many missile launchers will be sent, but a typical Patriot battery includes a radar set that detects and tracks targets, computers, power-generating equipment, an engagement control station, and up to 8 launchers, each holding 4 ready-to-fire missiles. Once the plans are finalized, the Patriots are expected to ship quickly in the coming days, and Ukrainians will be trained to use them at a U.S. Army base in Grafenwehr, Germany, officials said. Ukraine has been asking for the system for months, but the logistical challenges of delivering it and operating it are immense. Despite those obstacles, the reality of what is going on the ground led the administration to make the decision, the senior administration official told CNN, noting the continuing intense Russian missile barrages. Unlike smaller air defense systems, Patriot missile batteries need much larger crews, requiring dozens of personnel to properly operate them. The training for Patriot missile batteries normally takes multiple months, a process the United States will now carry out under the pressure of near-daily aerial attacks from Russia. The system is widely considered one of the most capable long-range weapons to defend airspace against incoming ballistic and cruise missiles, as well as some aircraft. Because of its long-range and high-altitude capability, it can potentially shoot down Russian missiles and aircraft far from their intended targets inside Ukraine. Previously, the U.S. has sent Patriot batteries to NATO allies like Poland as a way to bolster their defenses, and sent other weapon systems to Ukraine to assist against the Russian invasion. In recent years, the U.S. has sent Patriot missiles to Saudi Arabia and Iraq to counter threats posed by Iran and its proxies, and to the Pacific region to deter North Korea. In total, more than a dozen U.S. allies, including Germany, Japan, and Israel, have also purchased the system. The U.S. has sent Ukraine mid-range defensive national advanced surface-to-air missile systems in recent months. CNN has reached out to the National Security Council for comment. CNN has previously reported that the Biden administration was considering a move. Last month, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken told CNN that the U.S. is very focused on providing air defense systems to Ukraine. "We're now very focused on air defense systems, not just us, many other countries," Blinken told CNN's Christiane Amanpour. "And we're working to make sure that the Ukrainians get those systems as quickly as possible, but also as effectively as possible, making sure that they are trained on them, making sure they have the ability to maintain them, and all of that has to come together, and it is. We have a very deliberate process established by the Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin in Ramstein, Germany, that meets regularly to make sure that the Ukrainians are getting what they need, when they need it."
Peru explodes into fiery protest as anger over political crises ignites. A way out seems distant. The spark of the current unrest was the ouster and arrest of leftist leader Pedro Castillo after he tried to dissolve Congress illegally. It followed a months-long standoff where lawmakers impeached him 3 times, the final time removing him from office. Peru has been one of the economic stars of Latin America in the 21st century, with strong growth lifting millions out of poverty. But the political turmoil is increasingly threatening to derail its economic stability, with ratings agencies warning of downgrades, blockades impacting major mines in the world's know. two copper producer, and protesters demanding Congress and new President Dina Boluarte step down. For those watching closely, it should be little surprise. Voters are fed up with the constant political infighting that has seen 6 presidents in the last 5 years and 7 impeachment attempts. That is below Castillo's, which despite a string of corruption allegations was 24% just before he was removed. The Peruvian people are just exhausted from all the political machinations, the crime, uncertainty, and stalling growth, said Eric Farnsworth, a vice president at the Council of the Americas and Americas Society. He said Boluarte's pledge to hold early elections in April 2024 could help calm things in the short run. But that would not solve entrenched issues of a divided electorate and infighting between the presidency and Congress. It's a toxic soup, with a weak president, a dysfunctional Congress, the deposed president seeking to generate a popular resistance to his legitimate removal, an agitated populace, and little vision from anyone on how to get out of this mess. Corruption has also been a frequent problem. The only way many Peruvians feel they can make their voices heard is in the street. In recent days, protesters have blocked roads, set fires, and even taken over airports. Police have come under criticism from human rights groups for use of firearms and tear gas. There are echoes of protests in 2020, when thousands took to the streets after the impeachment and ouster of popular centrist leader Martin Vizcarra, who was succeeded by Congress leader Manuel Merino. After 2 died, he also was forced to resign. Castillo, less popular but with a support base in rural regions that helped him to a narrow election win last year, has looked to stoke things from jail, where he is being held while he is investigated over accusations of rebellion and conspiracy. On Monday, he called Boluarte, his former vice president, a usurper in a written letter to the Peruvian people where he claimed to still be the country's legitimate leader. The people should not fall for their dirty games of new elections. Enough abuse. A constituent assembly now. Immediate freedom, he wrote. Boluarte, a former member of Castillo's far-left party who fell out with its leader and criticized Castillo after his attempt to dissolve Congress, has called for calm around the country and pledged a government of all stripes. But she faces a tough reality, caught between protesters and a hostile parliament. With the recent history of Peruvian leaders littered with impeachment and jail, it is questionable whether Boluarte can hang on until new elections are held. Dina Boluarte is a murderer. 5 people have died, and they say nothing. Nothing matters to her, she is shameless, treacherous, said Guadalupe Huaman, a Castillo supporter protesting with a Peruvian flag and hard hat in Lima. Cutting Peru's outlook to negative and threatening a potential downgrade, ratings agency S&P said in a report on Monday that there seemed to be little to be hopeful about. The way Peru's most recent change in power occurred reflects heightened political deadlock, and it increases risks ahead, it said. Farnsworth voiced similar concerns. While Peru had a history of volatile politics, it was unclear how things would resolve this time, he said. I think this time is somehow different, he said. There is no real path forward, it seems.
Stock futures rise as investors await Wednesday's Federal Reserve rate decision. Stock futures rose Wednesday morning as investors await the Federal Reserve's latest interest rate hike decision in its effort to crush inflation, set to be delivered on Wednesday. Dow Jones Industrial Average futures rose 112 points, or 0.33%. Futures tied to the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq 100 ticked up 0.35% and 0.38%, respectively. Stocks rose for a second day during regular trading on Tuesday. fueled by a cooler than anticipated inflation report. The November Consumer Price Index was 7.1% on the year, less than the 7.3% gain expected by economists surveyed by Dow Jones. The 0.1% increase from the previous month was also less than forecast. The signal that inflation may have peaked was positive for stocks, as it means the Fed may be one step closer to halting interest rate hikes or switching to cuts, which would fuel equities. On Wednesday, the central bank will conclude its December meeting and deliver its latest rate hike. A basis point is equal to 1/100th of 1%. Chair Jerome Powell will also speak Wednesday, giving further clues about what's coming from the Fed in 2023. In previous meetings this year, traders have been sensitive to Powell's language, interpreting his tone as hawkish or dovish. The market obviously believes that there's going to be a pivot or a pause. That's what we saw today, said Steve Grasso, CEO of Grasso Global, on CNBC's Fast Money. If puts a wet blanket on that, the market's going to sell off. The Fed meeting is the final one of the year. The next central bank meeting will run from January 31st to February 1st, 2023. Markets are pricing in a 50 basis point rate hike from the Federal Reserve on Wednesday, its last meeting of the year. The CME FedWatch tool shows a nearly 80% chance that the central bank will raise its benchmark interest rate to 4.25% or 4.5%, which would be 1/2 of a percentage point from the current rate of 3.75% to 4.00%. There's a roughly 20% chance that the Fed will go with another large, 75 basis point rate hike, according to the tool. That would mark its 5th consecutive hike of that size. 1 basis point is equal to 1/100th of a percent. Stock futures open little changed after Tuesday's positive session. Stock futures were flat Tuesday evening after markets were positive for the second day in a row. Traders are looking ahead to the Federal Reserve's interest rate decision, due Wednesday. Futures tied to the Dow Jones Industrial Average were up 13 points, or 0.04%. S&P 500 and NASDAQ 100 futures were up 0.06% each.